A is for Allah, nothing but Allah. Ba is the beginning of Bismillah. Ta is for taqwa, bewaring of Allah. And Tha is for thawab, a reward. Ja is for Jannah, the garden of paradise. Ha is for Hajj, the blessed pilgrimage. Kha is for Khatam, the seal of the prophethood given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala al-mab'uthi rahmatan lil alameen. Sayyidina wa nabibina wa habibina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi. Wa man ihtada bihadyihi wa istanna bi sunnatihi ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new episode of Ask Huda, broadcasting to you live from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Brother Rashid says, one of the knowledgeable shuyukh here in the United Kingdom has deemed the university student loan scheme an investment transaction rather than a standard riba-based transaction because it has several conditions attached to it, such as you only pay back the money once you earn a certain amount, and the debt is written off after 30 years when you die. Is this a valid opinion? The issue of student loans is quite common in the West, and it is called student loans. And the Shar'i rule that all scholars agree upon is that any loan that draws in or drags interest, then it is riba. So if there is a loan and you gain something out of that, then this is a riba. Now, camouflaging it or diverting it from its true nature by claiming it is an investment, this is not true. You know it and I know it. The government gives you £9,000 per year. And it tells you that if your income exceeds something like 21,000 annually, in this case, you have to pay the 9,000 back plus interest. If it doesn't, that is your income, exceed it, then we'll wait until it goes beyond that. And if you die, we forgive you for that, and if you reach a certain age or after a number of years, as it's stated in the question, they'll write it off, 30 years. So some say that this is an investment. The government is investing in you. This is, with all due respect, nonsense. The government is not investing at all. They don't believe in halal or haram. They believe that this money may have a very big possibility of a return to them. So their citizens benefit, the government itself benefits from the interest money and from producing citizens that are productive by giving them university education. However, this doesn't change a thing. It is riba. It is a loan plus an interest on top of it, which led so many Muslims, and this is unfortunate, to cheat and lie. So they graduate system engineers or industrial engineers or chemical engineers or whatever position. They get a job, but they agree with the company, with the employer, not to disclose the real salary. Or they insist on not reaching the threshold so that they would not be forced to pay the interest. So they lie, they cheat, and they try to dodge. If it were an investment, they try to dodge giving the profit to their partner in this endeavor or in this joint venture. But this is not. This is clear riba. And I've asked shuyukh, and I'm talking about real scholars in Saudi Arabia about this, and if there is a possibility of looking at it from an angle of so-called investment, they said, no, this is nonsense. This is clear riba. Wavering or writing off some of the conditions of riba does not change its nature. It is still riba. So one says, what should I do? Should I remain being unemployed? Wallahi, this is something that you have to figure it out. Whether you have to study on a line, which is cheaper, and you have to put more effort into it, whether you work and gain some money and then study, whether you borrow from your relatives, from people you know, to give them later on, this is up to you. But you cannot come and camouflage such a transaction, which is riba based, and claim that it is an investment when it is not. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide all of us to the straight path. And I always ask the brothers and sisters, don't listen to me. Don't listen to Tom, Dick, or Harry. Go back to the grand scholars. Go back to the real scholars who can give you a sound fatwa which you meet Allah Azza wa Jal with. Now, the biggest problem is when Tom, Dick, or Harry would tell you that these grand muftis or these great scholars in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere, they don't know what's happening in the UK. So their fatwa is not implementable. And this is a great and serious issue which raises question marks on such an individual who says this and the reliability of whatever he gives fatwas on. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia. Muhammad. I think we've lost Muhammad. And Hamida says, I learned that there are different forms of Salatul Ibrahimiyya. Please, can I have the different types? Can I also recite any of the types after tashahhud, or I have to stick to one? The Salat al-Ibrahimiyya has many versions. What is the Salatul Ibrahimiyya? We have tashahhud, التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات, and then we have a Salatul Ibrahimiyya. The most famous is that we all know of. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. This is the most common, the most famous, and it was agreed upon by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So reciting this suffices, and this is the best form of salutation to the Prophet ﷺ. So whenever we hear the name of the Prophet ﷺ, we say, Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad. This is the short version. The longer version is Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad, etc. to the end. There is another famous narration which states Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi kama sallaita ala ali Ibrahim wa barik ala Muhammadin wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi kama barakta ala ali Ibrahim innaka hamidun majid. And also this is an authentic narration. You choose one of these two. As for the other forms of innovated Salawatul Ibrahimiyya, such as those provided by the tariqah of the Sufis. So you have as-salatu al-shadhiliyah, as-salatu al-tijaniyah, as-salatu al-nariyah, as-salat al-fatih lima ughliq, and they clap and they do this, and this is not from Islam, definitely. The Prophet would not, alayhi wasallam, make salutation and clap. This is nonsense. Neither would the Sahaba would do such a thing, the companions of the Prophet, alayhi wasallam. So do not take your knowledge except from the Quran and from the authentic hadiths, Bukhari, Muslim, elsewhere, after checking that it is authentic from the scholars. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam wa rahmatullah.
كيف حالك شيخ؟
Ya hayyak Allah.
I am from Jeddah, Sheikh.
Good for you. What can I do for you?
Alhamdulillah. I intend to do my Hajj Ifrad and I've got my Hajj permit. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
Regarding this, 3 questions.
Okay.
Our tour people are taking us on the 7th evening to Mina directly.
Okay.
In that case, what do we do for Tawaf al-Qudum? Is it mandatory or is it better to pray five salahs in Mina?
Okay.
Second question is, the sacrifice is not compulsory, but if I do it voluntarily, is it okay?
Okay.
The third question is, since I am from Jeddah, if I finish my Hajj on the 12th and come back to Jeddah and do the farewell tawaf and it's not crowded later on, is this permissible?
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, one last question. Can you briefly tell about the Islamic will, and how is it? Is it just a written document, or does it have to be a legal document that it has to be notarized and all that?
Noted. Anything else?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Barakallah fi. Now, Brother Muhammad is from Jeddah, and he is talking about one of the rituals of Hajj known as Ifrad. And this, as the scholars say, is the lowest of the 3. The highest is Tamattu', the middle is Qiran, and the lowest is Ifrad. Ifrad is only Hajj. Tamattu' is a separate Umrah with a duration between it and then a separate Hajj. Qiran is in between. So there is an embedded Umrah but not identified on its own. It's embedded within the Hajj. So the rituals of the Qiran and the Ifrad are the same. The person who is Qarin and the person who is doing Ifrad is the same. Which leads me to address Brother Muhammad regarding his second question. If you want to sacrifice voluntary, Akhi al-Kareem, then you might as well opt for the higher level, because as I stated before, Qiran and Ifrad are identical totally, except in 2 things. Your intention of embedding your Umrah into Hajj, and this is why you join or taqrin. Qiran comes from joining. So this is the first difference, their intention. The second is the sacrifice, al-hadi. So if you are going to slaughter both ways, then might as well opt for the higher reward. Going back to your first question, your campaign or your hamla, or the one who is giving you the tents and the camp you're going to, they're taking you on the 7th to Mina. And the sunnah is to pray in Mina on the 8th. Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha and Fajr of the 9th. So going a day or 2 earlier is totally permissible, but it's not part of the sunnah. What would I do if I were to be in your shoes? I would go with them to Mina and then take a car and go directly to Haram. Make my Tawaf al-Qudum, which is a sunnah, and then afterwards perform Sa'i al-Hajj, which is a pillar. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is how he did his Hajj. Now, if you don't want to do this, if you want to skip this process, this is up to you. There's no sin on you. But I would advise everyone to do this, because later on you will end up with one tawaf, which is a pillar, tawaf al-ziyara, tawaf al-ifada, tawaf al-hajj, all the same name, which you can postpone and delay and offer it on the last day of your hajj before leaving Mecca, whether it's the 12th or the 13th. But if you don't want to do this, this is up to you. Bearing in mind, if you do tawaf al-qudum and then you make sa'i of hajj between Safa and Marwa, you do not clip your hair. You remain as you are and then go back to Mina and finish your rituals. I'll take Muhsin's question and then come back to you, Muhammad. Muhsin?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamatullah.
Sheikh, I have some questions.
Yes.
Sheikh, first question is this, that I'm from subcontinent, and people in subcontinent, alhamdulillah, in Saudi Arabia, many people they do pray 5 times a day, alhamdulillah, in congregation. But in subcontinent, that people nowadays they're leading prayers, and it's a very serious matter. So when we give dawah to them and we tell them about that, if a person leaves of prayer, then he doesn't remain a Muslim. Right, sir? So and they tell us that this is a masala. It has some it is a difference of opinion. Firstly, I want to know this from you, Sheikh, that is this a difference of opinion among scholars, that if a person leaves, for example, if a person prays 3 times a day or 4 times a day, but in his heart he thinks that he has sinned and he needs to pray 5 times a day, but he leaves 1 or 2 or 3 prayers every day. Is this the person remains a Muslim or not?
Second question.
Second question, that it is impermissible to build a mosque where there is graves, right, sir? So what can we give an evidence to the person who says that there's in Masjid al-Nabi, the walls of Masjid al-Nabi, there's inside, there's Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq and Muhammad Sallallahu buried there. So what's the correct view on this thing?
Okay, any more questions?
Yes, one more, Sheikh. Sheikh, about a person who's a man, if his clothes are below the ankle, and is this a major sin or a minor sin? Or if a person says, no, this hadith is particularly about a person who has pride in his heart, so I don't have pride in my heart. So can a person give this dalil and say this, I don't have pride, and that's why my trousers and my everything, that my clothes is below my ankle.
Okay.
Is this right or wrong?
Okay, I will answer inshallah. Going back to Brother Muhammad, I think I've answered his question number 1. Question number 2. Again, if you insist on making it ifrad and you offer the sacrifice, there's no problem in that. His third question was, what's the ruling on going back to Jeddah, postponing and delaying the farewell tawaf, known as tawaf al-wada', until the crowd is lesser, so I can go after a couple of weeks? The answer that this is not permissible. Once you leave Mecca, going to Jeddah after finishing all of your rituals, then you have to slaughter a sacrifice known as fidya for abandoning something that is mandatory. However, it is possible, if you did not perform your tawaf al-ifada or tawaf al-ziyara or tawaf al-hajj on the 10th or the 11th or the 12th, and you leave to Jeddah, it is permissible for you to do so. However, you still did not perform at-tahallul al-akbar. Meaning, yes, you can wear your clothes, you can put perfume, you can clip your hair, there's no problem in that, but you cannot have any intimacy or intercourse with your wife. So it is much better for you to just call it a day, do your tawaf, finish your rituals, and go back home, inshallah, safe and sound. Another Muhammad from Saudi Arabia. Yes, ya Muhammad. Muhammad. Apparently Muhammad is not with us. Okay, Muhsin from Saudi Arabia. Oh, before that, Muhammad, the first Muhammad, had a fourth question, which is the Islamic will. What is an Islamic will? There isn't any such thing as Islamic will. There is a will. Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, told us that the Prophet ﷺ said that it is mandatory for a believer not to go to bed for 3 days, that is, without having his will underneath it, meaning it is prepared and ready. So if you have something to write in a will and you leave that more than 3 days, then you're not doing the right thing. So what to write in a will? You write the things that your family need to know. If I borrowed 100,000 from a friend and he trusts me and I trust him and there's nothing documented, no witnesses, if I die, his money would be lost and gone down the drain. And this is not right. So Islam recommends that I write it down. So when he claims it, there is something written. Likewise, the other way around. If I give money to a friend and I don't take any paper from him and I die, this money is my heir's inheritance, my heir's wealth. So by not writing it down, I have a problem. Likewise, if my family is known to do innovation after my death, putting lights in the streets and blocking it, putting chairs, bringing a qari to recite the Quran between Maghrib and Isha, giving coffee and tea to the passers-by and those mourners who are coming to give their condolences. These are all innovations. So I have to write it down, telling them, do not do this, for example. But there isn't any cliche to be followed or to be adopted when writing such a will, and Allah knows best. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Salam wa barakatuh.
Shaykh, I have two questions, Shaykh.
Yes.
One is in the Indo-Pak region, when after the Janazah prayer, they do salam on both sides, taslim on both sides.
Okay.
But in Saudi Arabia, they only do right side only. So the other one is correct or not? That is my first question, Shaykh. And the second question, Shaykh, my question is, I just want to think, Shaykh. Okay, that is my question, Shaykh. Thank you.
You're welcome, Akhi. Muhammad from Saudi. MashaAllah, Muhammad is all over. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I would like to seek your advice. It is regarding my daughter. She's a teenager. Now I'm facing a very difficulty with my daughter. And I tried my very best for the last 1 year to do whatever the best that I can do to submissive to Allah. But unfortunately, the test is still going on. I don't know. I'm worried that maybe my dua, I'm not sincere. Is there anything that I can help my daughter? It's very difficult to go through like this. Life is full with tears and fears every day.
Okay, what is the problem with your daughter?
She couldn't get along with anybody. She couldn't get along with the university friends. She couldn't get along with my own family. Even my family having a difficult time. She
Okay.
couldn't get
Okay, I will try to answer your question, inshallah. Brother Muhsin from Saudi Arabia says that it's an issue of dispute whether a Muslim who does not pray is still a Muslim or not. If a person does not pray at all, this is kufr. And this is the most authentic opinion. And I'm not talking about a person who prays on and off, like Brother Muhsin said. A person who prays 2 prayers or 3 prayers a day is still a Muslim, but he's a fasiq. He's a sinner. without any doubt. But a person who does not pray a single rak'ah, and if you tell him, come and pray, he ignores you. And if he were to be taken to court and the judge says to him, we will behead you if you do not pray, and he said, I believe in prayer and I believe in Allah, but I'm not going to pray, then this is a full-fledged kafir. And there is a beautiful discussion between Dr. Abu Amin Ablal Phillips and myself on this topic that was done 3-4 years ago in Green Lane Masjid in Birmingham, UK. I think it's called The Great Debate. You can find it on YouTube. And inshallah, it would be beneficial to listen to both parties' opinions and verdicts. So, yes, a person who prays 2 or 3 prayers a day is still a Muslim, but he is in great danger. Jalis from Saudi.
Hello.
Yes, Jalis.
Okay, I'm calling you from Jubail, Saudi Arabia.
Yes, sir.
My question is, one time you told us that in obligatory prayers we can have our own du'as.
Correct.
And the question is, can we do it in other language other than Arabic?
Okay, any more questions? Okay, I think he does not have any other questions. Second question of Brother Muhsin, he says that we know that praying in a masjid with a grave inside of it is totally prohibited, because the masjids are supposed to be only for Allah, and you cannot establish such a masjid on a grave or introduce a grave to a masjid. And the scholars say that if there was a grave and you build a masjid on top of it, the masjid has to be demolished. And if there is an existing masjid and then you introduce a grave to it, the grave must be dug out and the remains must be taken out. The problem is that he says that what about the grave of the Prophet ﷺ? It is in Medina. It is in the masjid. And we say, like all scholars say, that this is not true. The Prophet ﷺ, if you read his seerah, where was he buried? Not a single person who knows Islam would say that he was buried in the masjid. Everybody knows that he was buried in the house of Aisha. And the house of Aisha was not in the masjid, because she is a woman. She gets her menses and things happen, and this cannot take place in the masjid. Her house was like all the mothers of the believers, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, were adjacent. Their houses were adjacent to the masjid. So the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with them both, were all buried in the room, in the chamber of Aisha. Years afterwards, after Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Muawiyah, Yazid, in the time of Marwan ibn Abdul Malik, if I'm correct, long afterwards, he instructed his Amir, who was the Caliph of the Umayyad Empire, he instructed his Amir to expand the masjid. And he ordered him to include the houses of the mothers of the believers within the masjid. And all the tabi'een objected. Among them was Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and others. They said, this is not permissible. What can you do when the ruler has the army, the civil defense, the National Guard, the Marines, the Navy, everything? He said, Simon says, you're going to do this. And he forced them to do it. So the Prophet ﷺ was never buried in the masjid. It was this Khalifa who included the house of Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, in the borders of the masjid. And I hope this answers your question. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back.
Allah, la ilaha illallah. Allah, La ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Muhsin's third question was wearing the trousers under the ankles. Is it a minor sin or is it a major sin? Now, the most authentic opinion is that it varies. But in both cases, it is a major sin. Why does it vary? First of all, because the Prophet ﷺ prohibited it. But in some hadiths, he tells us that the punishment is that Allah torments the area that exceeds the ankles in hell. This is the only punishment. In other hadiths, the Prophet says, ﷺ, Allah does not look at a person who drags his garments below the ankles in pride. And in a third and crystal clear hadith, the Prophet places ﷺ 4 punishment. That 3, Allah Azza wa Jal will not look at them, will not purify them, will not have mercy on them, and Allah would give them strong or severe torment in hellfire. So the Prophet mentioned the first one, or the first category, is al-musbil. So the scholars compared apple to apple and said that the difference in torment and punishment cannot be on the same sin. If you add to that the hadith of Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, when he heard this hadith, and he said, "O Prophet of Allah, I'm a thin man, I'm a skinny person, and I try my level best to get my izar and tie it well, but one side of it may get loose and it would go below my ankles." So the Prophet said, "You are not one of them." So if you look at all of these hadiths, you know, first, if a person does not have any pride in his heart, the amount between his ankle and what is below it will be tormented in hell. And this is not something easy. The Prophet told us that the easiest person to be tormented in hell, the easiest of all punishment in hell, is a man that a stone of fire is placed in his sandals. The heat of this stone of fire makes his brain boils. So you can imagine what happens to the rest of his body just because of this stone of fire. So if this is the least of punishment, you can do the math. However, if you drag it out of pride, out of arrogance, and most of people, when they go to the tailor to have him make their thobes or qamis or shirwal or whatever, trousers or whatever, they insist that, no, prolong it more. And they know that they're wrong, because when they come to prayer, they fold their trousers. So they are doing it out of pride. And if you claim that you're not doing it out of pride like Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, Abu Bakr had someone to give him the green light, someone to judge his heart. And he says, you're not one of them. And that was the Prophet ﷺ. You and I don't have this privilege. We don't have anyone to testify for us other than our actions. And therefore, this is a major sin indeed, but it varies whether it is extremely major with 4 types of punishments on the day of judgment, or one punishment which is whatever is below the ankle is in hell. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia says that in the subcontinent they give 2 salams in the funeral prayer. This is reported, and there is nothing wrong in that, inshallah. So it's okay. The majority of scholars say it's 1 salam, but there are narrations that stated that there is a second salam. Some consider it to be shadha, which is weird, and others accept it to be acceptable, and inshallah there's nothing wrong with doing that. Abu Abdul Rahman from Saudi Arabia.
Yes, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hayyak Allah.
The first question is it permissible to sell counterfeit high name brand stuff which is not original but has the brand name of famous products in stores? This is my first question. The second question is, if somebody finds, say, a small chain in a parking lot that has very little value, but obviously it was dropped or lost from somebody, is it permissible to take it?
How little value?
It's part of a chain that was broken. It's just a piece of metal with a ring around it.
Okay.
People who work over there, is it permissible for them to pick up stuff like this and take it and use it?
Okay. Any more questions?
Yes. Is it permissible for a wali to also be a witness at the same time?
Okay.
Jazakallah khair.
Hayyak Allah. Okay. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia has a problem with her teenage daughter for a whole year, and this problem, all parents know that in one stage or the other, their sons and daughters may pass through such a stage. And you do not have one size that fits all. You cannot provide a solution for all. Some children must be dealt with harshly and disciplined. They may have to be reprimanded for what they had done. They might be grounded for a long time or deprived of some of the luxurious things they are enjoying and taking for granted. Others would not work with them such ways. So you may need to treat them differently. You have to analyze what makes your daughter click. Now, without any doubt, you must do a lot of dua in your tahajjud, in your prayers, whether it's fard or nafil, in sujood, to guide her and to open her chest and to make her normal. But in addition to that, you have to look into what makes her click. So I have to try this. If it doesn't work, try something else. If it doesn't work, try a new strategy. If it doesn't work, try to get the help of someone who might have passed such an experience before. Generally speaking, you have to give them a lot of love, a lot of compassion, but at the same time, draw the lines they must not cross. With your daughter, most likely, she loves to be alone. She wants to stay in seclusion. And if you look into her seclusion, you might find that she's on that all the time on her mobile, or on the iPad, or on the computer screen, and she's living her fantasies in what she sees. Now, this is truly dangerous. You have to cut it completely, because such access to Hollywood movies, to something maybe more serious, more fanatic, more radical, is dangerous. So cut all the means, cut all the Wi-Fis, take these things away from her, or channel it in a way that you can control and supervise. You have to look for alternatives. Maybe your relatives are not her cup of tea. Maybe her friends are not true friends. So you have to look into what makes her tick. Is it reading? Is it knitting? Is it cooking? Is it exercise? So you try to test her waters so that you can find the right thing, and may Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy for you and for all of us. Dr. Faisal from Saudi.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you, Sheikh?
I'm fine, Jazakallah khair.
Sheikh, I have a couple of questions today.
Yes.
I have one question, like if we do wudu and we come out of, say, the bathroom, but if we are not wearing, like our genitals are exposed, and if your spouse sees you, is the continuity of wudu is there, or do we have to do the wudu again? Or sometimes in the mirrors even, nowadays we have fancy bathrooms and you see yourself after the wudu or after the ghusl, you see yourself completely. So is the wudu or ghusl valid?
Okay.
And other question is it permissible, like suppose if a sheikh comes from any part of the world and he spends halal money, which might be in the form of donation, and stays in the frontline hotels and spends, say, 40,000-50,000 riyals in Mecca or Medina. Is it right, or should this money go to the needy and more poor people?
Okay.
These are the two questions here.
Okay, I will answer you, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Jalis from Saudi Arabia says, can we make dua in other languages other than Arabic? I've answered this question so many times, and let me answer it again. It is permissible to make dua during your prayers, whether they're fard or they are voluntary or nafil, whether they are personal or something related to akhirah. There's no problem in doing that. It is highly recommended to do it in Arabic. But if someone does not know how to do it in Arabic, I can say, Rabbi ghfirli, oh Allah forgive me. I know this in Arabic. But I want to say, oh Allah pay off my debts. And I don't know what's the meaning of debts. There's no problem in making such dua in your own native language. Alhamdulillah. Abu Abdurrahman from Saudi Arabia says, what's the ruling on trading in counterfeit brand names products? So I know that a Prada bag costs like 15,000 riyals. I can sell it for 200 riyals. Counterfeit, Chinese, excellent. First grade, second grade, third grade. I know that I can buy a Rolex for 65 to 80,000 riyals, and I can get a counterfeit replica, exact features for 600, 700 riyals. So what's the ruling on trading in these? It is not permissible to sell something that is like that. First of all, because the copyright is being violated. Secondly, you are trespassing on people's rights. Thirdly, when you do not tell the people that these are counterfeits, even if they know, by violating the rights of others, taking their brand, taking their design, taking their name as well. If you take a Prada and call it Pradon, for example, there's no problem. Even if you copy the design, there's no problem. In your country, it's okay. But to claim that this is real, and frankly speaking, I am shocked by those who go and buy counterfeit. When you buy something that's counterfeit, who are you fooling? So everybody thinks that this is a Rolex. Wow, they look at it and they're shocked and astonished. Akhi, if they are impressed by it, how do you go to bed at night knowing that you are a fake? Nobody buys counterfeit and wants to gain people's admiration out of it, except a true fake. So if you don't have it, if you can't afford it, don't waste your time. Buy the regular thing. Selling it and buying it, this is not permissible in my opinion. He says that they found a small piece of chain that has no value. Scholars say that whenever you find something that has no value, it is okay to keep it. They call it in fiqh luqata, and you don't have to announce it. You don't have to go and search for it. So if I'm passing by and I find $1 on the ground, there's no one around, I'll take it and put it in my pocket. This is worthless. It has no value. If I find such a cheapos pen that costs like half a rial maybe or less on the ground and there's no one around me, I'll take it. But if I find something that is expensive, like this pen or any other pen that has great value and people look up to it, because if I'm walking and I drop this pen and then I search and I remember that I've dropped it, I'll not go back to it. It's not that valuable to waste my time. So scholars give this as a criteria how to judge. If it's something that has no great value, you can take it without announcing it. But if you find a wallet with dollars in it or with euros in it, with credit cards, and you look around and nobody's there and you put it in your pocket, you're stealing it. You have to announce it in the neighborhood for a whole year, saying that I found something. Whoever had lost something, please call my mobile. And you go to the masjid and put a sign, you go to the police station, you go to the supermarket next to it. So throughout this year, nobody calls, it's yours. Of course, not the wallet, because wallet, it has IDs in it, so you can relate to who the owner is. I'm talking about a bag with valuables in it, or something that is valuable, a watch, but it's unattended. Brother Abu Abdurrahman's third question is, can a wali, and the wali is the guardian of the girl who is about to get married, can he be a witness himself? The answer is no. There has to be two separate male Muslims other than the guardian to witness the contract. So if there is a ma'dhoon, the authorized person who documents the marriage contract, can he be a witness? The answer is yes. He's a total stranger person. He's not involved. He's just there to document. So if him and someone else testify that the guardian said to and proposed to the groom to be, I give you my daughter in marriage, and the groom said, I accept her marriage, khalas, the marriage is done and it's over with. Dr. Faisal says, does one looking at himself nude or his wife looking at him nude affect his state of wudu or of ghusl? The answer is no. The things that break your wudu are limited. So if you know them, if you learn them, like the things that nullify your fasting, like the things that nullify your hajj. This is the beauty of learning your religion. Once you master these things, you don't need to come and ask me. So if you pass wind, if you urinate, if you defecate, if anything comes out of your private part, if you sleep, and if you eat camel's meat, these things break your wudu. What about if I smoke? It's a sin. Your wudu is intact. What about if I watch a movie? It's a sin, but your wudu is intact. What about if I listen to a song? It's another sin. Your wudu has nothing to do with it. So once you master this, you know, whether you look at yourself or your wife looks at you, the Prophet ﷺ used to bathe with his wife together. And there is nothing wrong in that, and it does not affect your wudu, and Allah knows best. His last question, and with that we may conclude, inshallah. He says that, what's the ruling on some scholars or some da'is or rich people coming to Mecca and Medina and staying in 5-star hotel and paying 40 or 50,000 riyals for their stay? Isn't this extravagance and they should have given it to the poor? The answer is no. If I'm a millionaire and I can afford it and I'm paying my zakat and I'm giving charity, what's wrong in me enjoying life, being close to the Kaaba or being close to the masjid and paying my money? Because through this way of talking, extravagance is well known. It's like saying, should I drive a BMW or buy a Hyundai? They all have 4 wheels and an air conditioning. My income allows me to buy a Mercedes. Then why shouldn't I? So no, this is no, it's not extravagance. It's within my limits, and I am doing my obligation, and Allah Azza wa Jal made this halal for me. There is nothing wrong in that, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And with this, we come to the conclusion of today's episode. Until we meet next time, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A is for Allah, nothing but Allah. Ba is the beginning of Bismillah. Ta is for taqwa, bewaring of Allah. And Tha is for thawab, a reward. Ja is for Jannah, the garden of paradise. Ha is for Hajj, the blessed pilgrimage. Kha is for Khatam, the seal of the prophethood given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.